of the Tromo, Fernando de Pires Silva, and it is wonderful to be back here in changeable conditions, it has to be said, as we gear up for the Porsche Endurance Challenge of Brazil, the second weekend of the endurance season, the seventh weekend of 2025 for the Porsche Brazil drivers. It's going to be an interesting battle today. We have qualifying to kick us off, 4 sessions out on the circuit, where each of the 2 drivers in each car gets to experience 20 minutes out on the course, and the combined times will set the starting grid in both the Carrera Cup and Challenge categories. It's a long race ahead of us this afternoon as well, 300 kilometers of this magnificent circuit. Last year, it was plagued with excitement, drizzle, and a little bit of badinage. Today is likely to be exactly the same story, as we have battles likely to go all the way to the checkered flag between the 2 men who have been fighting for most of the races in the second half of this season, Marcel Müller versus Miguel Paludo, and now they're going to go to battle for the Endurance Challenge with their teammates Felipe Fraga and Alan Hellmeister joining them on the circuit. Hello everybody, Jake Sanson once again here in the commentary box here at Estoril, and we are live across the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil YouTube channel as well as Motorsport TV. Great to be with you once again. Yesterday was all about festivities. It's been a fantastic battle over the course of the season, but it was great to have a little bit of a birthday atmosphere here in the Porsche Carrera Cup Brazil. Yesterday, celebrating a fantastic milestone in the paddock as the man who has been the inspiration for all of the fantastic battles in Porsche Cup Brazil since its inception, the CEO, Denner Perez, has been enjoying a fabulous birthday weekend here. He was presented yesterday in fantastic style with an amazing commemorative Formula One model from the Williams Honda Formula One driver from back in 1987, Nelson Piquet, who is here this weekend. They even had his fantastic Brabham Formula One car on display, and he even managed to drive it around the course over yesterday's activities as well. Great to see the 3-time Formula One world champion out on the circuit here at Estoril. Not just because he wants to enjoy the festivities, but of course his son is racing this weekend. Nelson Piquet Jr., the first ever Formula E champion of the world, as he competes and bids for his own slice of history, trying to become the Carrera Sport champion in 2025 in the endurance category. They are currently leading the championship, he and his teammate Roman Simkovic, by 5 points in the Carrera Sport category, but we'll talk all about the nitty-gritty of the class battles over the course of today's qualifying and race trim itself later. But there is so much to talk about going into these fantastic qualifying sessions. As I said before, 4 sessions out on the course, and over those 4 sessions, each driver will get 20 minutes behind the wheel. We'll get the Carrera Cup drivers out first, then their 20-minute session will end, and we will go to the challenge drivers, of which there are only 10 cars competing here this weekend. When their session is over, it's qualifying 2 for Carrera Cup, and then qualifying 2 for challenge. And that means that every driver will get the chance to race. In qualifying in the Porsche Endurance Challenge, it's the combined times of both drivers that will set the grid. So there will actually be a total lap of the fastest lap from driver 1 and the fastest lap from driver 2, and that will set the grid for the endurance race itself, which is going to be 300 kilometers in duration around this fantastic circuit, the former Formula One Grand Prix venue, of course, that hosted the Portuguese Grand Prix from 1984 all the way to 1996. And there have been some amazing Formula One races on this circuit over the years. Niki Lauda was crowned champion for the 3rd time on this circuit in the first race in Formula One in 1984. 40 years ago to the year, this circuit saw the first Formula One Grand Prix victory of the late, great Ayrton Senna da Silva, who many, of course, consider to be the greatest Formula One driver of all time. There have been many other great duels on here. Nigel Mansell, of course, took victory for Ferrari in 1990, a year after getting disqualified for his incident with Ayrton Senna in the 1989 rendition. In 91, he lost the title when a bodged pit stop cost him his right rear wheel. In 92, he managed to win his 30th and what we thought was final Grand Prix on this circuit. And then all the way through to the latter stages of the 90s, where we saw fantastic Grand Prix victories from the likes of Damon Hill, David Coulthard, and Jacques Villeneuve, all for the Williams Formula One team in 3 consecutive seasons. Then the circuit lay dormant for international competition, but it has done a lot in various other categories. But it's certainly become a very nice staple of Porsche Cup Brasil. Last year we had a fantastic festival of racing here, where we had both the sprint and endurance challenge taking on. This year it's happened again, having had the sprint and endurance races taking place at Portimao, not too far away from here in the Algarve. But now we are back at the Estoril circuit once again. And last year it was drama aplenty, both in the sprints and in the endurance ranks as well. But now we get ourselves ready for timed qualifying. In the championship fight in the Endurance Challenge of Brazil, the race 1 winners at Portimao were Marcel Müller and Felipe Fraga in that famous number 544 Fabian Patras car, which, by the way, after the double victory on Thursday and Friday for Marcel Müller, has just moved into 4th position in the Drivers' Championship. Going into the weekend, he was 11th and is now up to P4 in the championship. He can't become champion, sadly, because he's too far away from the scores of Miguel Paludo and Christian Hahn. But he can still be 3rd in the championship, as he is only 2 points behind Tiago Vivacqua, who is also on the starting grid for this particular encounter. He's going to be teaming up in the Carrera Sport category with Carlos Campos, who of course teamed up with Tony Kanaan in the endurance final last year at Interlagos to triumph in Carrera Sport. Carlos Campos definitely with plenty of friends in his back pocket to try and go for glory in the endurance category. I'm going to talk you through all of the competitors that you'll see in Carrera Cup for this fantastic encounter, and it is going to be a who's who of Brazilian and even further afield motorsport. Miguel Paludo, the king of Porsche Brazil so many times over, he's going to be climbing back behind the wheel of his trusty Brandt number 7, alongside Alan Helmeister, the 39-year-old from Sao Paulo, who is a former champion in Brazilian GT4 and the GT3 Cup of Brazil, as well as racing in the Spa 24 Hours 2 years ago. And those two are, of course, leading the championship and leading practice. It's fantastic stuff. They are currently just 9 points behind Marcel Müller and Felipe Fraga, who are at the head of the standings. Miguel Paludo and Alan Helmeister second in the standings. So those are the two teams scrapping away for the title. But they could be overhauled by the number 70, Lucas Salas and Rafael Suzuki, the two Sao Paulo drivers. Lucas Salas, the regular racer in Porsche Carrera Cup, who's raced in TCR, the Fun Cup 25 Hours, and of course has the most wins in history in Carrera Sport in the Porsche Carrera Cup of Brazil. He teams up with Rafael Suzuki, a race winner in Stock Car Pro, who drove Formula 3 and Super Formula Lights in Asia, and the GT World Challenge of Europe Sprint 25 Championship campaign. He also competes in a couple of those races. Marcel Müller is teaming up with Felipe Fraga, the 30-year-old from Jashunda, who is, of course, the Stock Car Pro champion back in 2016 and the Blancpain Endurance champion in the silver category 2019. So Felipe Fraga definitely not a man to be trifled with when he gets behind the wheel in Q2. We're also going to see the 18-year-old Matias Camparato from Sao Paulo, the reigning F4 Brazil champion. He will line up alongside another talented teenager, the youngest team on the grid, the 18-year-old from Brasilia, Matheus Ferreira, who has been racing in the Porsche Carrera Cup of Deutschland in Germany, of course, this year, as well as being a race winner in both F4 Brazil and the Winter Series. It wasn't that long ago that I was mucking about with him playing football in the FIA Karting Championships a few years ago. Great to see such amazing talents up and down the length and breadth of this paddock. There is Marcel Müller getting himself ready to watch on as his teammate ventures out onto the course. Felipe Fraga will take to the circuit first. So the first name drivers will set the pace initially, and then we will go into the next run of the competition later on. 12 minutes of the course then, as the drivers venture out for the first part of the action. And this is the rookie category. So we're going to see drivers battling for the rookie class points now out on course, as they will get their first lap times in on the board. So let's talk you through the rookie standings as it currently matches up. Marco Pisani and Renan Guerra are the championship leaders, of course, having taken a fantastic performance in Portimao. You can see for yourself that the circuit is wet after some overnight rain, and that's going to make things particularly interesting for this qualifying session. Out onto the circuit comes the 166 car. That is the all-Portuguese lineup coming into this one. The pair that races in the Porsche Sprint Challenge of Iberica and was 9th in the standings 2 years ago. Miguel Caetano alongside Joao Prosa. So great to see some Portuguese talent on the grid here at Estoril, and they're not the only ones. We're going to see a couple of celebs in Portuguese racing. Bernardo Pinheiro, the rising star, the 21-year-old, who is also out in the rookie category, teaming up with Flavio Champau. He's been racing, Pinheiro, in the European Le Mans Series and the Le Mans Cup in LMP3 of late, as well as being a Ligier Euro Series race winner. Of course, it wasn't that long ago that the Portuguese driver was in FIA karting and champion to the future in the OK category. There is the number 15, that's Leonardo Sanchez teaming up with Rafael Martins. And Martins is the one who is at the wheel. He was in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy representing his nation, as well as having competed in the F4 British Championship, Pro Mazda, BR Stock Lights and Stock Car Pro over the years. The 26-year-old with a lot of ability. There is the Portuguese lineup. That is Joao Prosa, who is behind the wheel. They're good to be rooting for the all-Portuguese team if you are, of course, of a Portuguese persuasion, because there are a couple of homegrown talents here on the grid. There is the number 74. That is André Bragantini Jr., who is teaming up with Piero Cifali for this particular run. It's Cifali who's actually out in the car at the moment. My apologies, I thought it was André Bragantini Jr., the 46-year-old from Baranya, but it looks as though it is Piero Cifali that's been drawn first. Though the drivers will get their chance to run in Q1, and all the drivers that don't run in Q1 will obviously run in Q2 a little bit later on. But these are the 10 cars that we have out on the course at the moment. There should be 11, so I think we're just waiting for the 11th one to come out. And as I say that, it ventures out onto the course. The number 25, that is Galid Osman, who comes out onto the course, the 39-year-old from Poa in Sao Paulo, who's raced pretty much everything there is to run in South America. Brazil Marcas, Super TC 2000, the TCR, South America and World Tour, don't forget, as well as competing in Stock Car Pro. So there is Joao Prosa, trying to get his time up to the mark. The Portuguese talent obviously wanting to put the all-Portuguese team as far up the order as they possibly can. But it's never easy. They teamed up, of course, in the world of Porsche Sprint Challenge Iberica, which of course is raced out in this part of the world, both in Portugal and Spain. But a lot of great talents to go up against, particularly the regulars in the rookie category. Marco Pisani and Renan Guerra, the championship leaders, on 45 points. Silvio Modestoni and Jeff Giassi are second in the standings on 38, just 1 point ahead of Eduardo Menossi and the young superstar Leonardo Reis, who is definitely starting to turn some heads. 21 years of age, only third in the championship at the moment. Eric Santos and Gabriel Roba, the former Stock Car Pro driver, fourth position in the standings. Then Paulo Sousa and Galid Osman, P5, and then Leonardo Sanchez and Rafael Martins ahead of Flavio Champau and Bernardo Pinheiro. And then Marco Billy is back in the grid for this one, but he has a new teammate. His brother Maurizio is not here this time, so on this occasion, Marco Billy is actually teaming up and stepping up to the sports category. So he's left the Carrera rookie title fight and has actually stepped his way up a class. So you're going to get to see Marco Billy later on, teaming up with Gaetano de Moro, who is currently leading the Stock Car Pro category out in Brazil. We'll talk more about that in a little while, but Marco Billy and Maurizio Billy no longer participating in Carrera rookie. Then we have Piero Cifali and André Bragantini Jr., 9th in the standings. Vanier Pontes and Rafael Reis are still in the rookie category. They are 10th in the standings. And then, of course, the two cars that are not yet on the scoreboard, namely Miguel Caetano and Joao Prosa. And the other one is the 33. That is Bruno Campos, who now teams up with Nicolas Costa. That is the car that he used to share with the fantastic Antonella Bassani, but she does not have a teammate for this weekend. So rather sadly, Antonella Bassani fans are going to be plumb out of luck today, because she is not competing in the endurance race this time, despite the fact she set the fastest lap of the race on Friday morning. Did a fantastic job. Sorry, the fastest lap of the weekend, I should say, getting the job done in race 1. But she's not going to be out there, unfortunately, on this particular occasion. There is the 85, that is the car being driven by Eduardo Menossi and Leonardo Reis. It is Reis that is behind the wheel at the moment. There is the number 25 of Galid Osman, the last car to come out onto the circuit. The lap times are going to be considerably different to what they were yesterday in the testing, because as you can see for yourself, the rain that has fallen overnight is still present out on the circuit. It's a wet start to the day then. No slick tyres anywhere for these drivers. There's far too much standing water out on the circuit. By the time we get to the race start, that could be a different story, of course. But certainly for the time being, it is a wet situation. Gabriel Roba, by the way, is the fastest driver out on the circuit at the moment. That is the 28-year-old from Pelotas in Rio Grande do Sul, having won quite a lot in his short time in motor racing so far. He was the BR Turismo champion back in 2017, the vice champion in the BR Stock Series 2023. He made a rather difficult transition into the world of Stock Car Pro last year and has not found a seat for 2025, sadly, but he is here racing with us, which is great news, and he's currently put the car on a 1:54.247. That is the fastest lap of qualifying so far in the Carrera rookie category. Leonardo Reis is currently second, ahead of Rafael Martins, and then Galid Osman. Here is Joao Prosa, who really doesn't want to be at the tail end of the field. Let's see what kind of lap time he produces as he comes across the line this time. Well, Prosa is still down in 10th position at the moment. There is Leonardo Sanchez's teammate, that is Rafael Martins. And having seen Leonardo Sanchez take a victory in Carrera Rookie on Thursday, he would really love to help his teammate get up to the sharp end of the field, and that's the team that is currently running down in 6th position in the standings on 19 points in endurance. Whoa, very close to the gravel there for Rafael Martins as he's really pushing it. Wants to be careful what kind of lap time he gets, a 1:53.972, but I don't know if that's going to stand, because of course that lap time, he was pushing a long way on track limits. I don't know if that's going to be a legal time or not. There's Flavio Champal in the Bitget car that he is currently sharing with Bernardo Pinheiro, the 21-year-old from here in Portugal, the driver from the Algarve. I talked about the fact that there's several Portuguese drivers in the field. There are, of course, two other drivers that we haven't mentioned yet that are going to be in the Carrera Cup category a little bit later on, including a name that many of you in the motor racing world know and love. We'll keep that mystery a little bit further on. There is Joao Prosa, still trying to find a little bit more time from his car. Well, Rafael Martins' time has remained on a 1:53.972, so there's no note on my screen yet that suggests that that time is going to be deleted, so I think he's still where he is for the time being. Gabriel Roba's time is still good enough for second, then Leonardo Reis, Galid Osman, Rafael Reis in P5 ahead of Silvio Moristoni in the very appropriately numbered 911. Then Flavio Champal ahead of Marco Pisani, Bruno Campos, Joao Posa and Piero Cifali. That is the order at the moment in Carrera Rookie. Getting ready for the second of our endurance weekends, the 7th event in our calendar 2025. Any major changes? Well, Galid Osman has remained on a 4th position. There is the 99. That is the car currently being shared by Vanier Pontes and the man who is at the wheel, Rafael Reis. So Rafael Reis is another very talented youngster to watch out for. Made his debut, of course, in Stock Car Pro 3 years ago at the age of 20. Made his comeback in the category this year. And he is partnering with our great friend, Vanier Pontes, who was promoted up from Challenge in 2025. And of course, he is the fantastic entrepreneur who is the founder and CEO of the PK Race Park. Just over a minute and a half to go then in the session. And that car has gone to the dizzying heights of 5th position for the time being. Just waiting to see what more we get from this particular battle out on the course. Looking like we're having some difficulties with the weather, as you can rightly imagine. And it's affecting a couple of the electronics as well, unfortunately. So apologies if we struggle from time to time to follow the action. But certainly that is Galid Osman coming across the line for 4th position. No improvement there for him on this lap, but he has got the opportunity to get one more lap in the can. So as Galid Osman goes down to the first corner again, there is the 33 car. That's the one that belongs to Bruno Campos. He's behind the wheel this time, sharing that car with Nicolas Costa. And of course, they are in the Carrera rookie category, whereas last time out, that car, the number 33 at least, of Nicolas Costa, was shared by Antonella Bassani. And they didn't have the most successful time, unfortunately, in that particular race battle. 5th position was all they could get. It's rather unfortunate that Nicolas Costa has now been employed and poached by Bruno Campos, because it's left Antonella Bassani without a race drive for this weekend. Did a great job on Thursday and Friday, though, of course, in the sprint challenge, in the sprint races, I should say, of the Carrera Cup, including setting the fastest lap of the event. So we're just being told, of course, that in both Carrera and Carrera Sport, it is obligatory for the drivers to use wet tyres. They have to make sure that in these circumstances, they are obviously running on wets rather than on slicks, because there is far too much standing water out on the circuit. So they've obviously got to make sure that they are compliant with those rules. It's certainly going to be intriguing to see how things continue out on the course here. They're definitely giving us plenty of excitement already as the checkered flag goes out on the course, and up to the top comes Rafael Martins with a very final flying lap of the session. So Rafael Martins is now on the top spot, ahead of Gabriel Roba, and then in 3rd place it is Leonardo Reis, ahead of Galid Osmond. So a very good start indeed then to Rafael Martins. Exactly what we were hoping to see. It's certainly getting very strong indeed for the competitors out there on the course, as now we get ourselves ready for the drivers to venture out onto the course in both the Carrera Cup and Sport categories. The Carrera Sport are informed by race directors that it is obligatory for them to run with wet tyres on. So a very interesting challenge awaits us, as there is the car that is currently leading the standings in the Endurance Challenge. Marcel Muller and Felipe Fraga are the 2 drivers that raced that car this year. They have 78 points in the standings, ahead of Miguel Paludo and Alan Helmeister, who have 69. The reigning champions, unfortunately, in endurance in 2025 are not with us. That is Werner Neugebauer and Rubens Barrichello, who won the championship last year. Sadly, they have gone on to pastures new. Werner Neugebauer has another racing campaign that he's involved with. Rubens Barrichello, our dear friend and reigning endurance champion, just became the NASCAR Brazil champion a few weeks ago. So that just shows you that he is not going to slow down anytime soon. We hope he can rejoin us for the season finale of the Endurance Challenge at Interlagos in November. And it wouldn't at all surprise me if he managed to get a car together to put himself back on the starting grid in order to do so. Wouldn't shock me in the slightest. Any chance he gets to win, he will absolutely go for it. And so the contenders bring themselves back into the pits after the end of the rookie category. Rafael Martins in provisional pole position, along with Gabriel Roba and Leonardo Reis, then Galid Osman and Rafael Reis from Silvio Morostoni, Flavio Champau, and then it is Marco Pisani, Bruno Campos, Joao Bossa and Piero Cefali. That's the end of the rookie session. So all of the contenders bring their cars back in. They will get another chance to run, of course, for another 12 minutes later on, where they hand the car over to their second contenders. A very, well, shaking the head is Rafael Martins. I'm not sure why, because he's set a time that's good enough to be fastest. Maybe he is not quite content with the way the car feels, or he feels that the lap will be disallowed or whatever, but that doesn't look like the body language of a man who's just gone quickest in his session. So we'll try and keep up with that story as it develops, but it looks like there is going to be a developing story, which is interesting, as the cars line up at the end of the pit lane, ready to head out for the next part of the course. So it's going to be an interesting return to the circuit for these two as well. Two names absolutely with plenty of pedigree and history in the world of motor racing. Two of the most successful Brazilian families are teaming up in the number 88 car in Carrera Cup. The Bozell and Fittipaldi families will team up. Pedro Bozell and Enzo Fittipaldi will get to go out onto the circuit together this weekend. So the first car out on the circuit is the number 80. That is being driven by Nelson Piquet Jr. First ever Formula E champion, podium finisher in Formula One for Renault, as well as, of course, having driven pretty much everything with an engine over the last few years. He represented Brazil in A1 Grand Prix back in the day. He's raced at the Le Mans 24 Hours. He's driven NASCAR in multiple categories and, of course, currently races in Stock Car Pro, as well as being the teammate to Roman Zimkovic. There is Nelson Piquet Jr. in the mutant car, number 80. So we'll have to keep an eye out for him over the course of the weekend. They are currently leading the standings in the sport category, he and Roman Zimkovic, by 5 points to Yosemar Junior and Sergio Romeo. And then we have Nelson Monteiro and Thiago Camilo, 8 points off the lead in third position in the sport category. Don't forget that these guys will get to race, some of them, not all of them, but certainly the regular contenders will get to race on the Formula One weekend at the Sao Paulo Grand Prix on the second weekend of November, because they will be the support race series to the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. It's a big opportunity for these contenders to continue to showcase their amazing flair and skill as we get ourselves up to speed once again. The drivers out on course, starting to feel the fluidity of these cars. Not easy in wet conditions either, because this circuit has a bit of a tendency to bite back on a driver, and not only that, but you also tend to find that these cars are not particularly easy on the first lap either. So there could be quite a few moments where drivers have some thrills and spills as the drone picks up the first sector. It's been reprofiled over the years, of course. That first corner was a lot more open back in the day. It's tightened up a lot now. You can see there is the confirmation from the race director. That is Portuguese for it is obligatory to run with wet tyres through the course of this session as the track continues to dry out. But it means then that everybody has the same advantage, or I should say disadvantage, depending on how quickly it's going to dry out. But certainly a very nasty opportunity if the drivers get their strategy wrong. But at least it's equalised by everybody running with the same tyres on this occasion. There is the treble 8 coming towards us. That is the car that Linu Perez is sharing with Beto Gressa. And it is currently, I believe, Beto Gressa who is behind the wheel. Certainly looking for some very fast times in that particular machine. Great to see everybody starting to find their form early doors. My apologies, it's not Beto Gressa in the car yet. It is the regular driver in that particular car, Linu Perez, the man who has the most rookie Carrera wins in history, 7 in total. He's won in the sport category, the rookie category, and the challenge sport category. So an awful lot of work has gone into his incredible journey through the world of Porsche Brazil. There is the number 7. That is Miguel Paludo, the legend of our sport. He is the Porsche Brazil, what Michael Schumacher was the Formula One. The man is just absolute lightning in a Porsche 911 in Brazil. And he's currently leading the 2025 championship standings, but not by much, it has to be said, after a fantastic Thursday and Friday for Christian Hahn. He hasn't quite got the dominant streak he would like to have going to the season finale at Interlagos on the Grand Prix weekend of the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Paludo's lead over Christian Hahn is now only 20 points. So that's going to be really interesting, and will set up a bit of a showdown for us there as Nelson Piquet Jr. has gone to the top of the table. A 1:53.284 for him. Here is the 5:44. That is the car being driven by Marcel Muller. Is that going to go to the top of the standings now? Well, not yet, it's not, because he's only just gone out onto the circuit to start setting the pace, as Yosemar Junior is just behind him there in the number 27. It's such a shame that he has reverted. Oh, red flags, red flags. So we've had a red flag for the qualifying session. So we need to figure out what's happened there and where it's happened. So we are red flagged with 6 minutes and 56 seconds to go. Now that is not good news for the likes of Marcel Muller, Linu Perez, and various others out on the course. That is Francisco Horta, who is sharing his car this weekend, as always, with William Freire. Now that's a bit of a difficulty then for the officials. I'm not sure why we're under red flags, because I haven't seen the incident as yet, and I don't think you have either. But certainly at the moment, we are under red flags, which is not in the script for qualifying. Currently looking to see how everybody else has managed to get it all together. Well, there is the number 70 car. That is Rafael Suzuki behind the wheel. The Japanese Brazilian, as it were. Cut his teeth in the world of Japanese single-seater motorsport. Worked his way into the world of Stock Car Pro, and now, of course, coaches for Lucas Salas here in Porsche Cup Brasil. Great that they get to team up for the endurance category. Into the pit box, or just outside the pit box, I should say. That's Nelson Monteiro, who is teaming up with Thiago Camilo for this weekend. Another great talent. Thiago Camilo has been racing in Stock Car Brasil since 2003 and has spent the last 5 seasons in the IMSA Michelin Pilot Challenge. So under red flags, still haven't quite seen what it is that's caused the red flag. But certainly there is a red flag in qualifying. There's no two ways about that. We just need to allow the officials and the marshals to do what they need to do to correct the situation, whatever the situation might be. It's certainly enough to put us under red flags as we currently look at our driver, Nelson Monteiro, out of his car and currently looking at his GoPro by the look of it, or his cheap imitation version of it, I should say. Just trying to get some extra data. We don't quite know what the reason is, by the way, for this red flag. We only know that there is a red flag on the course. So we're going to double check with everybody and make sure that everybody is A-OK. Great to have your company, everybody, by the way. We know that you're all excited to get the qualifying session back underway again and see how your favorite driver is going to perform. I was going to tell you about the competitor in the number 13 crew, because they have not yet made a massive impact yet, although I have to say that one of their drivers, Bernardo Souza, has set a fairly decent run. Those who are into their rallying will know the name Bernardo Souza. He used to be a rally driver in the world of World Rally and European Rally. Now racing, of course, this year for Proton and Comtoyu in the FIA World Endurance Championship and GT World Challenge European category. But he's partnering up with a name that you all know very well. Antonio Felix da Costa is back in the Porsche Brasil category once more, as he teams up with the number 13 car of Bernardo Souza to make an all-Portuguese lineup for this particular category in the Carrera Cup. And they are going for outright victory on home soil. Even though they can't win the championship, they don't care. They want to win the race. 300 kilometers of the Estoril circuit. And that's going to be a really interesting challenge now for the regulars to go up against two brilliant ringers from Portugal in Bernardo Souza and Antonio Felix da Costa. There is Felipe Fraga getting himself ready to get behind the wheel of Marcel Muller's car when the time comes. And this is a car to watch out for as well. Not just because it looks like Lightning McQueen, because the number 95 Rusties is pairing up with a fantastic lineup. Alcifeld Manito, the 17-year-old who is the regular driver of that car, is teaming up this weekend with the 3-time Stock Car Pro Series champion, Gabriel Casagrancha. That is going to be very exciting to see what he can do as they quest for glory in the Sport Carrera category. That's going to be very interesting to see what Gabriel Casagrancha can do, particularly in conditions like this. He's a bit of a master, so there is a great chance then for the number 95 car to come through and go for a sport victory. Let's not forget that you're only a sport driver by grade of driver, so there's a chance that if he gets out on the same bit of circuit with Antonio Felix da Costa at the same time, which of course they will do in Q2, but they could well end up doing so. Oh no, sorry, they won't do in Q2 because Casagrancia is behind the wheel of that car right now as the driver to get the qualifying back underway. Green flags. So we're still none the wiser as to why the cars were red flagged. They have been given a couple more minutes to add on to the qualifying session as well. So I'm afraid I can't tell you why we were under red flags because I don't know is the answer. But certainly the race session had to be stopped and now it's been restarted again. But certainly for the time being, we are back under starters' orders. And it's great to see everybody back into the circuit once again. Marcel Muller, Yosemar Junior, Lindu Perez, Rafael Suzuki, Nelson Monteiro, the 18-year-old Matias Ferreira, William Frere, Seba Manuccelli, Gabriel Casagrancia, Thiago Vivacqua, Gaetano De Moro and Enzo Fittipaldi joining Nelson Piquet Jr., Marcos Regadas, Miguel Paludo and also Bernardo Souza out onto the course. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about the number 88 car because I told you that there's going to be two famous families going into the Carrera Cup battle, and it certainly is the case because we have Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi. So how do they relate to the names that you know? Well, Pedro Bozel is the nephew of Raul Boesel, the legendary IndyCar driver. He's also the brother of Luis, 41 years of age from Curitiba. He's raced in GT3 Cup Brasil, BR Turismo and Stock Car Pro over the years, keeping the family motor racing tradition very much active. And then there's young Enzo Fittipaldi, his teammate, the 24-year-old, who of course was born in Miami in Florida in the United States, but still carries his Brazilian national license with great pride. He is the grandson of the two-time Formula One world champion Emerson Fittipaldi. He is the nephew of Emo Fittipaldi Jr., which is hilarious to a certain extent because his uncle is younger than he is. So that just tells you how complicated the Fittipaldi family is. But he's also, of course, Enzo Fittipaldi, the brother of Pietro, who acted as a reserve driver for the Haas F1 team for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and of course got his Grand Prix debut with them due to COVID-19 in the 2021 championship campaign. Enzo has raced in FIA Formula 2 and Formula 3, and of course has the distinguished honour of being the F1 virtual champion, driving with the Haas F1 team that his brother was actually driving for in real life. He won that title back in 2021, so he's an adequate gamer as much as he is an adequate racing driver, so great to see. Right, the track is looking a little bit drier as everybody is trying to find a little bit more pace out on the course this time. We're under green flag conditions as everybody is trying to find that ultimate speed around the course. By the time we get to the next session, there could be enough of a dry line that we end up with a decent run for qualifying. So very interesting stuff at the moment. Everybody is still trying to figure out the speed of their cars, trying to get the tyres back up to temperature again as we look at the 118. That is the teenager, Matias Ferreira, running in behind Linu Perez. And just in behind the 88, that is the car belonging to Enzo Fittipaldi. Great to see so many fabulously famous racing names on the circuit here this time. Bozel, Fittipaldi, Piquet, Antonio Felix da Costa, they're all here amongst them, as well as the regular competitors within the fold of Porsche Brasil. It's going to make for a fantastic motor race. If only we had Werner Neugebauer and Rubens Barrichello back on the grid again as well, then we really would have the ultimate all-star lineup in Porsche Brasil from the last couple of years. As Lino Perez backs off, moves aside and gives himself a bit of clear space. There is Enzo Fittipaldi, getting himself back up to speed in the hope that he can find a decent lap time. Currently the fastest driver on track is Nelson Piquet Jr., having done a 1:53.2 just before the timer ran down to 0. Just before the red flags came out, I should say. The timer's going to hopefully run down to 0 this time as we watch Lightning McQueen ahead of Miguel Paludo. That is, of course, Gabriel Casagrancia this weekend. So Gabriel Casagrancia teaming up with young Alcifel Manito, the 17-year-old from Curitiba. And there is the 544. That is Marcel Muller, the man who is now 4th in this year's sprint race standings. He came into the weekend in 11th in the standings, but 2 race victories on Thursday and Friday have now put him into 4th place, just a couple of points off the pace of Thiago Vivacqua. He can't win the championship this year, sadly, although imagine how much he would have dominated the championship had he taken the 3 race victories in sprints this year that were denied him due to punctures at Velocita in round 1, Velocita again in round 2, and then at Interlagos in round 3. So now the competitors are getting themselves ready as Nelson Piquet Jr. gets right off the racing line there to try and make sure he doesn't impede anybody. As up to 2nd position now comes Gabriel Casagrande, tucked up behind Nelson Piquet Jr.'s time. There is the 83 car. That is the machine being driven by Marco Billi and Gaetano De Moro this weekend. Now, Gaetano De Moro is the man who is currently leading the Stock Car Pro Brazil Championship in its brand new SUV regulation. And he's the only driver in 2025 to have won more than 1 race. So currently, Gaetano De Moro going across the line, and he's gone fastest. Gaetano De Moro going up to the top spot then. So he goes quicker than Enzo Fittipaldi and then very nearly misses his braking point completely for turn 1. So not the greatest of situations then for our competitors. If they're struggling to stop the cars going into turn 1. But that was a very close call for Gaetano De Moro as Enzo Fittipaldi gets out of everybody's way. There's Marcel Muller trying to charge his way up the rankings. But it's currently Gaetano De Moro with the fastest time in front of Enzo Fittipaldi. Then Thiago Vivacqua has come forward into 3rd place. So Nelson Piquet Jr. has dropped all the way to 5th position behind Francisco Horta. But certainly the leading Carrera Cup driver is now Enzo Fittipaldi. So very good run so far. Unfortunately, my timing screen has had a major malfunction. Hopefully we'll get it running again very soon indeed. But certainly you can tell on your screen who is leading the way. That is the 83 of Gaetano De Moro, the current championship leader in Stock Car Pro, making a visit to Porsche Brazil. But here comes the number 7, Miguel Paludo, the leader of our championship in the sprint category. 2nd in the endurance rankings. What are we going to get in terms of fast times now? Well, certainly Lino Perez is going to get out of everybody's way, as Miguel Paludo's time is only good enough for 9th place. This could be an amazing race. It's going to be a fascinating challenge for all of the contenders out here, especially if the starting grid is going to be as chaotic as this. Up to 2nd again comes Nelson Piquet Jr. across the line. He has made a fantastic lap of this and gone up to P2 on a 1:51.123 ahead of Enzo Fittipaldi and Gabriel Casagrande. Then Rafael Suzuki from Thiago Vivacqua, William Frere in 7th place ahead of Marcel Muller, Marcos Regadas and Miguel Paludo. Just in the final 20 seconds or so of qualifying in Q1. They obviously go out onto the circuit again later, and that is so that we can get all of the drivers to get behind the wheel for a portion of the race battle. And there is young Enzo Fittipaldi, who is the brother of Pietro and the grandson of the 2-time Formula One world champion and the Indy 500 winner Emerson Fittipaldi. So Enzo is the fastest of the Carrera drivers so far, currently looking at 3rd place. get this for a top three. De Moro, Piquet Jr. and Fittipaldi. But no problems at all up at the top spot for Gaetano De Moro. He gets out of the car. He knows that he's done everything he can. Are there going to be any last moment changes? Don't think so for the time being. Certainly doesn't look like anybody's going faster, particularly. Having said that, though, Gabriel Casagrande has set a personal best first sector. Leonardo Reis just said the fastest third sector of anybody, so maybe Gaetano De Moro's time not quite as sustainable as we thought. Checkered flag is out on track. Where is Marcel Muller going to end up? 9th. Marcel Muller only P9. And Miguel Paludo is only P11. Well, this wet weather qualifying session has already thrown up some major surprises. Fascinating scenes as here comes Enzo Fittipaldi to cross the line. Can he go any faster? Because he's been demoted down to 4th position now. As Gabriel Casagrande's got second. Fittipaldi gets the pole for the moment. Enzo Fittipaldi with an amazing run. Smashes the time of Gaetano De Moro and Gabriel Casagrande. Excellent run, 1:49.81. And that puts the number 88 car as the favourite to get pole position on a drying circuit. They have found a sensational groove. And Enzo Fittipaldi goes provisional pole position here at Estoril. That is excellent news for the team, and certainly exactly what they were hoping for coming into this one. Excellent stuff for Enzo Fittipaldi, who really found a perfect lap at the end there. Gaetano De Moro second, Gabriel Casagrande, 3-time Stock Car Pro Champion, in third. Then it is Nelson Piquet Jr. in P4, ahead of Tiago Vivacqua, I do believe, in 5th position. Excellent work. We're going to see a replay of Enzo Fittipaldi pushing the limits and finding the ultimate lap that puts the number 88 into provisional pole position here at Estoril for our second endurance race of the year. 6th position for Matias Ferreira, the 18-year-old. Rafael Suzuki in 7th ahead of William Frere. Marcel Muller is only 9th ahead of Marcos Regadas. Miguel Paludo only 11th. And then it is Bernardo Souza, Rafael Martins, Lino Perez, Gabriel Robert, Leonardo Reis, Josimar Junior, Nelson Montero, Galid Osman, Seba Malucelli, Rafael Reis, Silvio Morostoni, Flavio Champao, Marco Pisani, Bruno Campos, Joao Possa, and Piero Cifali. The 27 cars then in Carrera Cup have done their first qualifying run, and Enzo Fittipaldi found a lap time there 0.7 of a second quicker than Gaetano De Moro and Gabriel Casagrande, and that means that we are now going to go into the second qualifying session with a very open season opportunity for pole position. It's unpredictable as ever, but Fittipaldi gives the team 0.7 of a second more than their opponents, with a very varied qualifying grid likely to be the way forward. Now, we've just been told by race director that the tyres are open, so they can choose whether to stay on wets or to go slicks. And that means basically that every single team is going to put slick tyres on. They know now that the circuit is getting very dry very quickly, so I don't suspect there's going to be a single team out there that is going to stay on wet tyres. And let's not forget, of course, that we go into the Carrera Rookie Session 2 with a lot of very impressive young drivers there trying to find their feet and go further forward. That's going to be really interesting. Now, I do believe that we've actually had a change to the session there. There's Enzo Fittipaldi embracing Pedro Bocel. Enzo Fittipaldi, of course, still under Red Bull backing. Great to see him putting on such a fantastic display here. Now, I believe that the timetable has actually changed a little bit because of the weather conditions. I believe the next session out on track is now going to be the Carrera Rookie session. And that is because they're basically trying to make sure that the Carrera and Sprint Challenge drivers get similar grades of racetrack to run on. Because if you had the if you had the drivers from the Sprint Challenge drivers going ridiculously quicker than the Carrera drivers, that would actually make for quite an interesting challenge going into the races themselves. But certainly for Carrera Rookie, it's open tyre selection, which means that pretty much everybody, I think, is going to go the way of slick tyres. We'll find out very soon indeed, of course. The drone picking up the beautiful layout of this Estoril circuit. It was always one of my favorites as a child in the 90s. Always seemed to provide great drama and action in Formula One, and certainly in any of the other categories it ever raced in. It was always very, very exciting. In Porsche Cup Brasil, it has always been a very exciting destination to go racing on. Right, now we are getting ourselves ready then for the next part of qualifying, and that is going to be for the Carrera Rookies. Session 2, they'll head out onto the circuit again, and so it'll be the second drivers that will now get their chance behind the wheel. But this is going to be absolutely fascinating now. Looking at the results of what happened previously, obviously the time to beat is that of Enzo Fittipaldi, 1:49.819, compared to the time set by Nelson Piquet Jr., who is next up, a 1:50.539, and then Gabriel Casagrancha popping up for a 1:50.564. Sorry, Nelson Piquet Jr. did a 1:51.1. It was Gaetano de Moro that popped up with a 1:50.539. But the time to beat for everybody is Enzo Fittipaldi's of a 1:49.819. We're now going to swap over. So the drivers that were in Q1 will now get out of the car and they will hand over to their teammate to try and find a similar style of pace. So on the timing screen, if you've got access to it, they're now listed in number order because, of course, the drivers have 0 for their score because it's the next driver that gets behind the wheel. So the cars will now venture out onto the circuit for the second part of qualifying, Q2 as it were. So it's now going to be Eduardo Menossi who gets behind the wheel of the number 85 instead of Leonardo Reis. And so on and so on and so on. We'll talk about them all as they venture out onto the circuit. We begin with Carrera Rookie. And a very interesting start for Pedro Bozel. He knows he's going to get behind the wheel of his car with a very decent margin now given to him by his teammate Enzo Fittipaldi. So out onto the circuit go the competitors in the rookie category. Everybody venturing out onto the course as the second drivers take over the cars ready for this one. Going back into the rankings then for Carrera Rookie. We'll talk about it over the course of the next 2 sessions and figure out who's going to be starting where once the aggregate times come in from pole position, because of course we take the time from Q1, add it to the time from Q2, and then things get interesting from there on out. So do please send us your messages of support for your individual drivers or teams, or driver combination as it were. Tell us who you think is going to get pole position, because at this moment in time I genuinely don't think it's going to be anybody other than the combination of Bozel and Fittipaldi. But it's all down to Pedro Bozel to make advantage of that 0.7 of a second gap that Enzo Fittipaldi found in the last qualifying lap. As everybody now ventures out onto the course to try and add to the time set by their stablemate and get a decent lap time on the board. So we've got Menossi, Nicolas Costa, Paulo Souza, Leonardo Sanchez, Eric Santos, Jeff Gyasi, Andre Brigantini Jr., Bernardo Pinheiro. Then it is Caetano, I think it is, that's out on the course now. Yes, it is Miguel Caetano, the Portuguese driver, taking over from his teammate Joao Poça. And that is all she wrote, I believe, for that particular category. All 9 drivers in the class trying to venture out and set a decent time on the board. We're still waiting for the last other couple of cars from that group to venture out. Sorry, all the 11th of them. The last 2 cars that haven't ventured out onto the circuit with their second driver yet. Oh, big accident! Big accident from Leonardo Sanchez! Oh my goodness! Leonardo Sanchez wiped out at turn 1. Well, that is absolutely catastrophic. He puts his foot on the brakes and the back end gets away from him, snaps into the barriers. Oh, big shunt. And that's game over for Leonardo Sanchez in the hope for pole position. And that could be it for the weekend. Now, they'll have a second car lined up for them, but dear, oh dear, oh dear, that is a monstrous amount of damage. And that's what can happen in these situations, of course. My goodness me, that is a monstrous amount of damage. No question at all, it's a red flag. But what a disaster for the contenders here, who have obviously got to try and get themselves ready then for the battle that will approach us later. And certainly at this moment in time, it's not going to do. Thank goodness Leonardo Sanchez is out of the car, though. But this is the danger, of course, of being on a damp track and then saying, right, we're going to go onto open tyres. They're on slick tyres for the first time, and there just wasn't enough grip down into turn 1. And so Leonardo Sanchez, big accident. And as our man from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, who's been watching all week, points out, turn 1 strikes again. Very good point. It's not exactly as if turn 1 hasn't had its scalps already this week. Remember that first race in Sprint Challenge where we had 3 drivers miss their braking point completely into turn 1 and causing all sorts of melee. We had disqualifications in that race for Marquez and Marquez, for Fernando Arruda, and then we also had an incident from William Araujo, the rookie driver. They all got disqualified for basically misjudging their braking point into turn 1 and causing a monstrous accident. So the fans in the stands didn't actually have to wait that long then for the first bit of major drama. Wow, that was a big one. So it's going to be an interesting one for the drivers to try and get back into the action then. But they now know, of course, that this particular circuit bites when it's drying out. So the rescue car has gone to the scene to try and assess the situation. I think that's the medical car just going down to collect Leonardo Sanchez. They just want to take him for a bit of an assessment, because even though he's clearly got out of the car unaided, when you have an accident at that speed and at that ferocity, it makes total sense to just give these guys a chance to have an assessment. The fans are in the stands, getting ready for the excitement and the action. The D4U caps in operation there, of course, for their man that they're supporting, Vanya Pontes, who is, of course, the CEO and founder of the PK Race Park. So definitely a name and a brand that is well known to domestic motorsport fans. But it looks as though we're going to get ourselves back into qualifying action now with 9 minutes on the clock. No need to extend the session, because we were not up to speed and we were not really running the gauntlet on qualifying. So fortunately, it looks as though everything is going to go back to starters orders, although we are still clearing the circuit at turn 1. The car has been moved, which is the first big obstacle. Now the marshals are just sweeping the road to make sure that we can go back to race situation as soon as is humanly possible. So satin car getting ready to go. That is Paulo Sousa, having replaced Galid Osman in the car. So now Paulo Sousa will get his chance to light up the circuit and hopefully get a decent time on the board. The man who won the Imperio Endurance Brazil title 6 years ago, and a year before that he also won the Dopamina Endurance Brazil title. Very talented racer is Paulo Sousa. The stands filling up. They're not quite full yet, but certainly on the run to turn one, there will be quite a lot of people here this weekend watching. Try and keep Portuguese people away from motorsport, especially when they know they've got some fairly decent celebrities on the grid, like Antonio Felix da Costa and Nelson Piquet Jr. Nelson Piquet Sr. himself is here today as well. Then there's a rumour going around that he might take the Formula One car that he won the world title with in 1983, the Brabham BMW, out onto the course again today, having mucked about with the car yesterday and had a lot of fun. Certainly gave everybody a really great show about the side of the road. It's always really nice when you see regular members of the motor racing community really excited to see machinery out on the course. And it was very cool to see the Brabham BMW in the hands of Nelson Piquet out on the circuit yesterday. The Dart car, as it was always nicknamed in the world of Formula One. And Nelson Piquet giving his 1983 title winner a nice run again out on the course. He was joking on the Friday evening when he was sat in the car at the Dene Perez birthday dinner. I'm not sure I'll even fit into the car again, but he proved very easily that he could. There was a nice little helmet exchange as well over the course of the Porsche Lifestyle awning yesterday, as he had a very nice little play with Dene Perez. What I love about this paddock is that it's very much about fun as much as it is about everything else. There was some really nice fun and games yesterday while we were waiting for the action to get underway, as Dene Perez obviously got to sample some machinery yesterday out on the course. And as a birthday present, he got to sample behind the wheel. I'm not sure he actually drove the Brabham BMW, but he said he got to sit behind it. And there was one of the most beautiful BMW sports cars from the 80s that was running around the course as well. Also brought here, I believe, by the Piquet family. Well, I can stop waffling now, and we can talk about stuff that's relevant to today, because the green flag is on at the end of the pit lane, and we can go back into qualifying trim once more. That is good news. So the drivers go out onto the circuit again, minus Leonardo Sanchez, of course, although with the current regulations, he might be able to jump into the spare car if he is cleared to do so, to at least get a time on the board, as we get ourselves ready for the Carrera Cup drivers to get ready. And there is Nelson Piquet, the three-time Formula One world champion from 1981, 83 and 87. Great to see him here this weekend. He's been a fantastic guest and has shared so many fantastic stories and amazing insights and anecdotes about his journey in motor racing with all of the Porsche Brasil brigade. Great to see him, and it's wonderful to have his company here at Estoril, a circuit which, of course, he's got plenty of experience of as a driver. He raced here in every single Portuguese Grand Prix from 1984 until 1991 on this Estoril circuit, so he knows this place very well indeed, has very fond memories of it, I'm sure. And it would have been very satisfying indeed for him to get behind the wheel of that Dart Brabham BMW car from 1983 that he won the title with. So the driver's getting back up to speed. The advantage, of course, of having that red flag is that there's been even more time for the circuit to dry out. It's still open tyre choice, but I have a feeling that we're going to go straight into a fast lap for the slick tyres, and this time the tyres might bite a bit better than they did previously, as we currently look at Nicolas Costa, man who last time out at Portimao in the endurance category was teaming up with the fantastic female Antonella Bassani. For those who are waiting to see her out on the circuit, sadly you're not going to today, because she's not going to be driving for the Porsche endurance race this weekend. However, for those who want to see a talented female on the circuit, you will get to, because we're going to get the opportunity to watch in the Sprint Challenge category. Even though they've only got 10 cars in the lineup, one of them is going to be driven by a lady, the youngest driver in the paddock, in fact, the 17-year-old Cecilia Rebello, who is teaming up with Pietro Rembano. We'll talk about that a little bit later when the challenge drivers come out. But certainly for the moment, it's back to Carrera rookie, and the lap times are absolutely flying. As straight up to speed already come the drivers on slick tyres. Now this is going to be a bit of a lottery, because of course we're going to get the times that they set now added to the wet times that were set earlier on, and a big run wide there for the 25 as Paulo Sousa finds turn 2 a little bit tricky to navigate. Don't forget, this is still a damp circuit. It's drying, but it's definitely not dry. So the drivers have got to keep their wits about them as the circuit dries out. Get it just slightly wrong, and you're going on a one-way trip to the crash barrier, as we saw in the original start of this session for Leonardo Sanchez. So you've got to make sure that you still have a decent car underneath you. That's Eduardo Menossi, currently fastest in this session. But of course, we have to take into account that they are not really up to speed yet. Slippery conditions on the DigiFlag. I think the drivers are aware of that by now, as Nicolas Costa charges down the main straight in the hope that he can stop the car in good time. Ready for turn 1. It didn't work for Leonardo Sanchez. Hopefully it'll work for everybody else. In fact, his car is being recovered back to the paddock in the background there on the low loader. So a very solid effort now from Nicolas Costa is needed. He's actually gone to the top spot. So Nicolas Costa's time is now quick enough to be the fastest of all so far today. But there is more to come. Unfortunately, my timing screen is not updating, so we should be able to get those updates fairly soon indeed. But I imagine the weather conditions are playing havoc with the difficulties for the drivers and the engineers here. Network issues should hopefully sort themselves out, but it's difficult weather. What can you do? You can only just tolerate it, cope with it, and go as well as you can under the circumstances. There is the 911. That's the Capricornio car that normally runs under the number 2 in the sprint races. For Silvio Modestoni in endurance, they run as number 911. Very appropriate for a Porsche driver. And he's sharing that car with Jeff Gyasi, and it is actually Gyasi who's at the wheel at the moment. So once again, the contenders trying to find a little bit of dry running, but the circuit is getting drier all the time. It's definitely seat of your pants stuff for all of the contenders here as they try to get themselves back up to the faster speeds across the line. Jeff Gyasi's just done a 1:42.7. So that will do very nicely indeed as far as combining with the time set earlier. Provisional pole position then for the 911 of Gyasi and Moristoni, as Nicolas Costa's time of 1:41.7 is good enough to be second quickest overall when you take the aggregate into account, because there was about an 0.8 of a second disparity between the 911 of Moristoni's time and the 33 of Bruno Campos's time. So it's now up to their teammates to settle the difference. And at the moment, it's Jeff Gyasi's time that puts them on pole position for the moment. That's what makes this so exciting, because you've got that fantastic array of the average of the two times, or the, I should say not the average of the two times put together, I should actually say the totality of the two times put together. Because you then get the fastest time from one, the fastest time of the other, and then we get a median time, which is set as a result of those two. That's how pole position is determined. And at the moment, it looks like it's currently Costa's fastest lap time that puts them second quickest, with a median time of 1:49.6. A 1:49.2 for Gyasi and Moristoni, though. That puts them at the top for the moment. There is the 11. That is Bernardo Pinheiro, I do believe, behind the wheel of that car now, taking over from Flavio Champal. His best time is a 1:44.8. But these times added to the wet times from earlier will make for a really fascinating starting grid. And don't forget that in Carrera Cup, we only had 9th position on the grid provisionally for Gabriel Casagrande. Sorry, 9th position on the grid provisionally, I should say, for Marcel Muller. Only 11th position on the grid provisionally for Miguel Baludo. So when their teammates come out, they're going to make the difference between pole position and second place. We could get a crazy pole position here this time in both the Carrera Rookie and Carrera Sport and Pro. So across the line goes the 12. That is being driven by Renan Guerra. This is the car that currently leads the rookie standings, don't forget, the leopard print number 12. As the 911 still going strong in the hands of Jeff Gyasi. That time is no longer good enough for pole because Eduardo Minossi has come up with the goods. A 1:43.925 puts them on a median of 1:49.1. That puts them in provisional pole position. So every lap time improvement is going to change who goes on pole position. And Renan Guerra's gone fastest of all in Sector 1. So Marco Pisani and Renan Guerra currently find themselves down in about 26th position or so overall. So this is quite important now to get right. Try and find that fast time. Here is the 911. Jeff Gyasi trying to take back pole position. He needs to go faster to drop the median time. But it is going to be very tricky to see who's going to get the job done. A few seconds to go in the session. They may just get across the line in time to start another flying lap, but certainly behind them, Eduardo Minossi will not. The checkered flag now flies, and it'll be fascinating to see just at the wrong time. The timing screen goes down again in front of me. They'll try and correct it as soon as possible, of course. But it's quite an important moment. So fascinating stuff for all of the contenders as they try to get a little bit more out of these cars. That's the 99 across the line. That's Vanier Pontes. There's Marco Pisani coming through. Sorry, that's Renan Guerra. Is that going to be good enough for pole? Well, the 911, Jeff Gyasi's put a car into pole position for the moment with his improved time of 1:41.9. But Nicolas Costa has the fastest lap of 1:41.1. But that's only going to be good enough for 5th place after the time for Bruno Campos was a 1:57.5 earlier. Across the line comes the all-Portuguese car. That's Gaetano, who's done a 1:47.5. That's not going to help them move further forward. And here's Nicolas Costa just trying to find that little bit extra from the Porto 33 car. Currently good enough for P5. This is what happens when you add the fastest time from Q1 to the fastest time of Q2 and you get your median time. And that's what the lap time is, the important one. So still the driver's trying to find that little bit of extra speed, but back into the pits will come Nicolas Costa. He's not going to improve, so provisionally, I think it's going to be a pole position in Carrera Rookie for Jeff Gyasi and Silvio Modestoni as Gyasi completes his final flying lap to pretty much seal the deal. Everybody else, I believe, is coming in, having not gone quicker. So Jeff Gyasi has been able to assist his teammate Silvio Modestoni to the Carrera Rookie pole position. Very important moment in the session. We'll wait for official confirmation because unfortunately my timing screen is still not functional. And now we get ready to see Pedro Buzel. He gets ready behind the wheel of the 88 car to repeat the feat if he can in the Carrera Cup category. So as the battle will continue for pole position in the Carrera Cup category, it's Carrera Rookie that has been taken so far by that man. Carrera Cup, Enzo Fittipaldi. He got the fastest time originally. Now he's going to hand the car over to Pedro Buzel. But the fastest lap was set by Nicolas Costa, but the pole position provisionally is this car. The 911. Silvio Modestoni and Jeff Gyasi. And I know you're sitting there thinking, well, hang on a minute, if they didn't set the fastest time in Q2, why are they going to be on pole position? Well, that's because we add the time of Q1 to the time of Q2, and we find the median, the average time of the 2 times set. And as a result of that, it's going to be the 911 of Silvio Modestoni and Jeff Gyasi. Their median time is a 1:48.8, and that's good enough for Carrera Rookie pole position. Second place is the 85. That's Minossi and Race. 25 is third. That's Salzer and Osman. Fourth position will be Renan Guerra and Marco Pisani, the championship leaders, P4 on the grid. Then Costa and Campos, P5. And then the 11 of Pinheiro and Champao will be P6. Ahead of the 99 car, that's Pontes and Race. And then behind them, we have just 3 more cars. But it is certainly the 911 that gets the job done in fantastic style across the 2 laps. The most consistent, Jeff Gyasi and Silvio Modestoni. So that is the first group finished for qualifying, and that is Carrera Rookie. Looking forward to seeing what happens in the next rotation. 8th place, by the way, in the category is Cifali and Bragantini Jr. Ahead of the 166, the all-Portuguese lineup of Caetano and Poça. And in 10th position is the one car that we didn't mention before, and that is Eric Santos and Gabriel Rob, who did not have the lap times in the qualifying session that they were hoping for. They're going to have to start from essentially the back, as of course are Leonardo Sanchez and Rafael Martins, who did not go out and set a second lap time because of the big accident in turn 1 for Leonardo Sanchez, of which our man from Bucks County, Pennsylvania, points out that the drama at turn 1 reminds him of Portland International Raceway in Oregon. That's not exactly a bad comparison, it has to be said. There's many times in both IMSA and in IndyCar, turn 1 at Portland has provided many crazy moments over the last 30 years of motorsport there. And I think he's got a very decent point. So now back into the action we will go once again as the drivers venture out onto the course for the second run. Q2 for Carrera and Carrera Sport, and it's led once again by the 80, although this time it's not Nelson Piquet Jr. behind the wheel, it's Ruman Zimkovic. Out behind him goes the Infonox car, the number 17. That's the car shared by Marcos Regadas and Rodrigo Melo. There's the 14. That is currently being driven by Carlos Campos, who takes over from Thiago Vivacqua. Now, pole position is going to be very interesting here because the track is now drying. We've handed the car over to the second driver in each car, as there is the number 27, now being driven by Sergio Romeo, as we're just seeing the scenes of celebration back in pit lane between Jeff Gyasi and Silvio Modestoni as they celebrate Carrera Rookie pole. But now for the second drivers, this is going to be fascinating as the track is drying out. And there is Alcifer Benito, having taken over for the 3-time Stock Car Pro Brazil champion, Gabriel Casagrande. And so Lightning McQueen of Brazil returns Alcifer Benito to the circuit. But he gets to share that car this weekend with arguably the top driver in the last 5 years in Stock Car Pro Brazil. Only one driver has prevented Gabriel Casagrande from a clean sweep of championship titles over the last 4 competitive seasons, and that man was Rubens Barrichello in 2022. Although this year, of course, it might be another man who's in this race, Gaetano de Moro, who just finished his qualifying run, sharing his car as he is, of course, the number 25 car that he is sharing, of course. Gaetano de Moro currently running with the very impressive and very talented young racer, sorry, in sport, not in rookie, with Marco Billi. I got confused there for a moment because, of course, Marco Billi was running in rookie last time out, but they're now elevated into sport. So Marco Billi is now out on the course, having taken over behind the wheel of that car. There's Matias Caparato, 118, the 18-year-old, the reigning F4 Brazil champion, and there is Pedro Bozel. That car is now the favourite to get pole position because they had a 7/10 of a second gap on their opponent last time out. But it all depends on what Pedro Bozel can do behind the wheel. There is the number 544 now being driven by Felipe Fraga. He will not give up in the hunt for pole position, that is for sure. They lead the championship in the endurance category. And the 30-year-old from Jashunda, who is the Stock Car Pro Champ of 2016, the youngest ever in the history of the category. 21 years of age when he won that title. And he won the Blancpain Endurance Championship in the silver class 3 years later. Still a front runner in the world of Stock Car Pro. Great to see him back behind the wheel of a Porsche Cup car once again. And if he is as fast as I think he's going to be, then this could actually get the car back onto the front row of the grid again, despite only being 9th quickest in the original Q1 session. So there is the treble 8, now being driven by Beto Gressa, Stock Car Brazil light champion back in 2007, race winner in GT3 Cup Brazil, 41 years of age. There's the 70, that's the car now being driven by Lucas Salas, who regularly races that car. He's also driven in TCR, the Fun Cup 25 Hours, amongst many other categories. He has more Carrera Sport wins than any driver in Porsche Brazil history as well. So now all of the contenders trying to get themselves up to speed again, trying to find the ultimate pace in that car. Rodrigo Melo is the only one to have set a time so far, having been the first driver to cross the line. 8 minutes in the session. There is the 83. That's the next man to cross the line. That's Marco Billy. So Marco Billy is just hoping that he'll have a similar kind of pace to that of his teammate Gaetano de Moro, who currently leads the Stock Car Pro Brazil standings. There is Alcifel Benito. Lightning McQueen is back in town. He had a very tough weekend, or I should say a very tough week actually, on Thursday and Friday in the sprint races. Now we're going to get to see what he can do in the endurance, and he's got the most amazing teammate to go up against. Gabriel Casagrancha. What a man to learn from. So Alcifel Benito trying to get the number 95 up to the sharp end of the field as quickly as humanly possible. Just waiting for the times to update. It's been a very tough day at the office for the competitors in Porsche Endurance Challenge. It's been very tough indeed for the administrative teams and the media, as well as the broadcast coverage, because our timing screen is having as many teething troubles as a Porsche on heat. Hopefully we'll try and keep up to date with it as soon as humanly possible though. As across the line comes the 544. That is Felipe Fraga, a man who is definitely in contention to try and grab the pole position here in this one. There's Beto Gressa trying to push the treble 8 even further into the apexes of this course than normal. Porsche Brazil, of course, made up of drivers who are either entrepreneurs or aspiring racing drivers, and their coaches are invariably great racing drivers in GT racing and Stock Car Pro across the South American Peninsula. And so for Beto Gressa, this is a great chance for him to help his teammate Lino Perez move further forward. Just under 6 minutes left of the session, but not easy to predict how this is going to turn out. Up to the top comes Sergio Romeo. Now Sergio Romeo has got provisional pole position with a median time of 1:47.84 after a lap time of a 1:41.0 there. So Sergio Romeo has currently put his car onto pole position. Second at the moment is Rodrigo Melo. Up to third has come Carlos Campos, and up to fourth has come Roman Simkovic. So that's only on median times, but what is this man going to do? Alan Hillmeister. So Alan Hillmeister with a chance to put his teammate Miguel Paludo back up to the sharp end. Paludo leads the way in the Carrera Cup, but in the Endurance Challenge, they are second at the moment to Marcel Muller and Felipe Fraga, with last year's reigning champions Werner Neugebauer and Rubens Barrichello nowhere to be seen in 2025. Across the line comes the 7. What kind of lap time can we hope to get from Alan Hillmeister? He's just started his push lap, so we're going to find that out in just under 2 minutes' time, where he's going to filter out. But certainly up to speed, and behind him there is the 100. That is the time set there by the car that is shared by Seba Malucelli and Marcos Gomez. And Gomez has just gone second quickest, as Lucas Salas has put the car into second position with that lap time, as Alcifel Benito finds a little touch of gravel there. A little dust of gravel on the far side. Got to be careful. You really don't want to run the gauntlet there. Meanwhile, up into overall pole position has gone Feldmanito. That's why we're focusing on him, because his time, combined with that of Gabriel Casagrande, is enough to be the median fastest. They're into the 146s on average. So Feldmanito really is pushing it, and now we know why, because he could come up with his first pole position of the season. He may not have the fastest time in Q2, but when you add his time to Casagrandes and get the median, that's all that matters. There's Alan Helmeister. Once again, race directors have told the challenge drivers that the tyres will be open in terms of choice. They can do whatever they choose to. And they'll only get 2 sessions out on the course back-to-back, of course, because there's only 10 cars. So we'll get session 1, they'll have a 10-minute break, and then they'll go into session 2. Up to the top spot comes Lucas Salas now. Up to the top of the table comes Alan Helmeister. But the number 7 car is still a long way from pole because of how sluggish the time was. Now it's been updated. Second. Alan Helmeister, fastest in this session, second in the actual starting grid. When you take Miguel Peludo's time into account. So that graphic on your screen there to the left side is the graphic for Q2 only. It doesn't take into account the median average. Now, I've got that on my screen, so I can tell you when it's a good enough time for pole position. As there is the number 13 car. That is the car that they are borrowing from Alcy Feldman, the Tag Heuer Porsche number 13, and it's being driven by Antonio Felix da Costa. So Antonio Felix da Costa wants a fast lap time. As there's the number 70, that's Lucas Salas. Trying to find the most from his car. Trying to work his way further forward. Oh, it's actually... I'm told that Antonio Felix da Costa is not the man behind the wheel. It's actually his teammate, Bernardo Souza, who's behind the wheel on this occasion. I think that might be inaccurate. I'm fairly sure Souza did the lap time earlier. But certainly the 13 is now up at a 10th position overall. The new pole position sitter, once again, becomes the number 95, I do believe. As Lucas Salas tries to go faster still, and does. And it's going to be good enough, I think, for 3rd position, because the 83 has got up in a 2nd place on median. The pole position now is back with the 88, because Pedro Bozel's time is a 1:41.5, and that should be enough to put the 88 car into pole position on median by about 0.4 of a second. There's Felipe Fraga. 4th quickest in the session, 7th on the starting grid when you add his time to that of his teammate Marcel Muller. But this is the car that's going to be on pole position. Currently only 12th quickest in Q2, but when you add the time to that of Enzo Fittipaldi's from Q1, it's good enough on the median time. There it is. Fittipaldi's time a 1:49.8, Bozel's time a 1:41.5. You get the median average from that, it's a 1:45.6. And that's 0.4 of a second quicker than anybody else has been able to achieve on median. We're going to see a replay of Lucas Salas. That is not the racetrack, Lucas. And that's going to throw gravel onto the race circuit. So drivers are going to have to be careful on that part of the course, as here comes Pedro Bozel. A quicker lap time of any ranking will help, as Felipe Fraga goes fastest of all in this session, and that puts them 2nd on the starting grid. But what about Bozel? Has he gone quicker still? Yes, he has. There goes the number 70 of Lucas Salas. This lap time's not going to be a good one because of that mistake in Sector 1. But we are running out of time to do anything about it. He's got one more time lap. Felipe Fraga, by the way, just did a 1:39.5, which is mighty quick. That's a bit of a big moment from Matthias Camperato. Is he going to catch that? Oh my word, what a save from Matthias Camperato. Any other racing driver in the world would have chucked that into the barriers. That is the most incredible save. What an amazing bit of car control there from the 18-year-old Matthias Camperato. Well, no wonder he's an F4 Brazilian champion. That was amazing. Checkered flag is out. We're going to see if there's going to be any final changes, but I think it's going to be Bozel and Fittipaldi for pole. Fraga set the fastest time of anybody in Q2, and it's put them onto 3rd on the grid now because there's been an improvement. To move back in a 2nd position for this man, Alcy Feldmanito, is going to help put this car on the front row of the grid. If he can go just fractionally quicker, he might just be able to get this to pole position. It's going to be tricky to do, but he's got a little bit of time to play with. Can Alcifeldmanito get this car slightly quicker? No, not if you do that, you can't. And he's bailed. That was so nearly a pole position for Alcifeldmanito in tandem with Gabriel Casagrande, but as soon as he lost it out of the final turn, he knew it was game over for pole. What a shame. What a shame. How close was that? There's the car that's going to be starting fourth on the grid. That's the 83 of Gaetano De Moro, teaming up this weekend, of course, with Marco Billi. They're going to be starting all the way up in the dizzying heights of P4. Wow. Absolutely extraordinary scenes here in quali. But pole position will go to the 88 car. Even though Pedro Bozel was only 15th quickest in Q2, the combined time of Enzo Fittipaldi from Q1 puts them in pole position by just under a tenth of a second. They've done it. Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi, who are not contesting the full season, by the way. This is a one-off for them, and they will start from pole position. These two legendary Brazilian families, the Bozels and the Fittipaldis, still have life and still have relevance in Porsche Brazil. The dynamic duo continue their charge forward. Amazing stuff. Absolutely fantastic. The 41-year-old Pedro Bozel, along with the 24-year-old Enzo Fittipaldi, have stolen pole position for this race. And just as our man from Bucks County, Pennsylvania on YouTube points out, it's like an all-star race with all these big names. It is really good fun. You're absolutely right. It's going to be amazing. Last year at Estoril, Antonio Felix da Costa put on that amazing charge through the field. If you remember, if you were watching last year, almost got the victory overall. But a fantastic performance from Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi. All I can say is this is going to be an amazing race later, and what a shame that we don't have the reigning champions in Porsche Endurance as part of this, Werner Neugebauer and Rubens Barrichello. That would have been an amazing addition to the lineup. Just one more car, and that really would have been the completion of the all-star lineup for me. So Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi will be on pole position. But we still don't know the fate of the challenge cars, because the challenge cars are going to come out next. Now, as far as I'm aware, the challenge cars cannot start ahead of the Carrera Cup cars, but the lap times are going to be faster, of course, because the track is drying out. So as far as I'm aware, the Carrera drivers have to start the race in front of the challenge drivers. So even though the lap time, the median average lap time here is going to be quicker in challenge than it's going to be in Carrera Cup, for safety reasons, the Carrera drivers will start ahead of the challenge drivers, as far as my reading of the rule book is correct. There is the pole position trophy, though. One apiece for Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi. The 41-year-old from Curitiba and the 24-year-old from Miami in Florida. They have got the job done in the 88 car. They may not be full-timers, but they are really quick. And how wonderful is that? Two families that have made their name out in the United States in IndyCar over the years. The Bozels with Pedro's uncle, Raul Bozel. And of course, Enzo Fittipaldi's grandfather, Emerson Fittipaldi, was the first foreign winner of the IndyCar Championship under its kart running. And of course, was the first foreigner, as it were, to win the Indy 500 for over 20 years, when he managed to take the victory in the Indy 500 in 1989. The previous two foreign winners, of course, were the great Jim Clark and Graham Hill. Two more drivers that managed to get two World Championship titles in Formula One, as well as Emerson Fittipaldi. But great to see that the Bozel and Fittipaldi families are still top dog in motorsport. several decades later in Porsche Cup Brazil. It's something in the genes, I tell you. So now we venture out onto the circuit for the first of our 2 challenge category qualifying sessions. Just 10 cars, but it is going to be an exciting run. They're also going to be fighting for their own pole position race, and there are 3 classes within these 10 cars. So let's talk you through the competitors that we've got in the challenge category. We have the newly crowned Porsche Sprint Challenge rookie champion, Daniel Newman. He teams up with Gustavo Bandeira in the number 21 car. Gustavo Bandeira, of course, raced in F4 Italy, F3 Brazil and BR Stock Series. That car is currently being driven by the youngest driver in the field, Cecilia Rebelo. Just 17 years of age. And she is partnering Pietro Rimbano, who I'm told is actually the driver behind the wheel of the car at the moment. So I apologies to Cecilia. She'll have a go in Q2. But Pietro Rimbano, 27 years of age, from Sao Paulo, the former BR Stock Light champion. And of course represented Brazil in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy in 2011 on the same starting grid as a chap called Charles Leclerc. So that tells you everything about his level of talent. Pietro Rimbano. Out onto the circuit goes the number 66 car. That is the car being shared by Sadok Leiter and Fabio Carboni. I am told it's Sadok Leiter, the regular driver of that car, who is behind the wheel. There is Pietro Rimbano, man who raced in karting in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy up against Charles Leclerc. So Rimbano has plenty of great skill and determination. Won the title in BR Stocklight 5 years ago. Definitely a worthy teammate for Cecilia Rebelo to learn from. Rather a shame under the circumstances that Cecilia couldn't team up with Antonella Bassani, but of course her deal is with Pietro Rimbano, and they are fighting for the championship in the Sprint Challenge category. So it's very important that they commit to that. 7th in the overall rankings at this moment in time, as well as being 7th in the sport category. So they've still got plenty of opportunities to move forward. They didn't really get the best of results at Algarve, but they've got a chance to bounce back from that. There is the 22 car. That is the car being driven by Caio Castro in the normal championship season. And he's teaming up with Danilo Derani, who is in the sidelines watching along. Caio Castro, of course, the 36-year-old from Sapazal in Mato Grosso, has raced in Formula Truck in Brazil, Brazil GT and the GT World Challenge Europe Sprint category, and is on course to be a championship contender in the sprint category. Although in reality, it's looking likely that that championship is going to go to Caio Chavez, who is not racing in the endurance category himself. Also out on the circuit is the championship leading pair of Jose Morenito and Matias Iorio. Jose Morenito, of course, regular in this category, alongside the 28-year-old, who is the former BR Stock Light champion, the F3 Brazil champion, and the GT3 Cup Brazil race winner. Let's check in with the 55, shall we? That was Carlos Ruiz, along with Carlos Ruiz Jr. The two of them sharing their car together for a real family affair. As we look at Sadok Leiter, really starting to push now, and with a track that's drying out, we're going to see 2 very fast lap times, of course. Now, I'm trying to double check and figure out if the Carrera drivers will actually start ahead of the challenge drivers, if the lap times are, of course, going to be quicker. Because on the timing screen in front of me, their lap times are obviously going to be quicker. So we'll have to double check on that one. I'll try and get a ruling as soon as possible. So out on the circuit, there is Caio Castro. Currently putting in their paces. Trying to work very quickly indeed here. 9 minutes to go in the session. And of course, they're going to have 2 sessions back-to-back here with a particularly faster circuit than earlier on. So it's going to be an interesting one for the battle on circuit as we look at Pietro Rimbano sharing that car with the 17-year-old Cecilia Rebello. We'll see her out for Q2. This is where we're going to see some very fast lap times indeed from these cars. There's the 23. That's the car that is regularly being driven this season by Leonardo Herrmann. He's teaming up with Vitor Batista, BR Stock Series champion 3 years ago, GT3 Cup Brasil champion 2018, and 10 years ago, he won the Euro Formula Open title. So Vitor Batista, definitely a driver who knows what it's like to race at the sharp end of the dais. Can certainly mix it with the best of them. But Leonardo Herrmann has a tendency to be win it or bin it in this championship. We saw that over the course of Thursday and Friday. Just a couple too many mistakes, unfortunately, have really robbed him of a chance to go for this year's Porsche Carrera Cup Sprint Challenge Championship. But there's still more to come from this season. Of course, they've got 2 races to go in the sprints yet, which will take place on the same weekend as the Sao Paulo Grand Prix as guests to Formula One. That's a big twitch there from the 21. That's the car that's being shared by Daniel Newman and Gustavo Bandeira. At the moment, the leading car in the dais is Matias Iorio. His lap time is a 1:42.7. And their lap times are considerably even to what we saw from the Carrera Cup drivers earlier on. And I'm just getting clarification from the officials. I'm told that if the challenge drivers do a better median time than the Carrera Cup drivers, they can start the race ahead of them. So we are in for a very interesting scenario. I thought that the challenge drivers would have to start behind Carrera, but if they get a faster median time, then no, pole position may not be confirmed yet. So we know that the pole position in class for Carrera Cup has gone the way of the 88 of Bozell and Fittipaldi, but if these challenge drivers can get a faster average time, then they will steal the pole position away from them. I've never seen anything as dramatic as this before, but it could still go the way of a challenge driver for pole position, because of course they started this session on wet tyres, but in challenge they've started them on slicks. Now, fabulous question here from our motorsports fan in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Will the endurance race start in formation or single file? Now that is under the discrepancy of the race control. They can decide on safety grounds, depending on the conditions we get later and the circumstances we're in, if we can go on single file or in dual grid formation. Normally, we would run under dual grid formation. So if the track remains dry, there is no reason on paper why we shouldn't have a 2x2 formation as normal. And what an opportunity this is if we get to see a challenge car get on pole position. In fact, all 10 cars might get a better average time than some of their contemporaries. Well, this is absolutely fascinating. So currently at the moment, it is Vitor Batista who is the fastest driver. He's just gone quicker in the number 23 car with a 1:42.0. Now, all that would need to happen in the second session is for a 1:46 or a 1:47 even from Leonardo Herrmann, and that car would go pole position. Fascinating. This endurance series qualifying session could suddenly see a very dramatic starting grid indeed. we could see the challenge cars starting ahead of Carrera Cup. And what that means for you at home is that the first 2 or 3 laps of this endurance race could have all the makings of a Daytona 500. It could be that exciting. So here comes the 22. That is Caio Castro. Knows this car like the back of his hand after Thursday and Friday, knows the circuit quite well now, of course, as well. Well, this is absolutely extraordinary. Who would have thought we'd be in this situation? Vitro Batista with a 1:42.0. There is Jose Morenito, trying to get the number 45 into provisional pole position, but the lap times they're doing are in the 1:42s. The average times that we're getting were in the 1:45s, I think, the 1:44s maybe. So this could be, oh well, no, the biggest, yeah, the average time from Pedro Bozel and Enzo Fittipaldi was 1:45.6. So if we can get a lap time average less than a 1:45.6 from any of the challenge cars, then we're going to get a challenge car on pole position. And I have had clarification from the officials. I had to ask the question because I wasn't sure, but challenge drivers can start ahead of Carrera Cup cars if they get a faster average time. Wow, this has the chance to be the race of the season then, particularly in the first half hour. That is motorsport that you will not want to miss. Sadagleiter still pushing that car hard. 1:43.2, big twitch on the way to the hairpin. And suddenly, this run for pole position has got more than interesting. It's got spellbinding. This could end up being the Porsche race of the season. So let's see if this is going to be a daring do pole position. Certainly in terms of fast time in Q1 of the challenge category, everybody has set a faster time than the median average from anybody in Carrera Cup. But that's just one lap in one session. Their teammate now has to go and replicate that in Q2. And that's the difficulty. It's not enough to get one flying lap in Q1. You've got to make sure that your second driver has a similar lap time, but we could get the top 10 completely full of challenge cars. Something I never thought we'd ever see in Porsche Brazil. But these are very unusual circumstances coming into this. And it's in the regulations. If the challenge cars go quicker than the Carrera Cup cars, then they can start the 300-kilometer endurance race ahead of the faster cars. The faster drivers, I should say, because the cars are pretty much exactly the same. But the faster driver lineups, which means we will get overtaking galore in the first stint of the 300-kilometer enduro. You do not want to miss that race later. So there is the number 45, Jose Morenito. Oh, someone going off the road there briefly. That was the 2. That was this particular car, the number 2, which is currently being shared by Luis Souza and Bruno Bonifacio. There's Pietro Rimbano, third quickest now, 1:42.17. Now, get this, if Rimbano gets a decent enough run and is only a 10th of a second off pole, and Cecilia Rebello comes up with the goods in this second session, she could put this on pole position as the youngest driver in the field. What a story that would be. Off the final turn comes Pietro Rimbano, 1:42.053 to beat in Q1 of Challenge. What can Rimbano do? It's not enough to improve. It's a 1:42.172, but that's just over a 10th off the fastest time. If Cecilia De Bello can match that kind of speed, we could suddenly find ourselves with the mother of all results in qualifying. Could the 17-year-old Cecilia Rebello from Virginia in Minas Gerais come up with a pole position? All the pressure in the world is on her now. But considering what she's done in her tender 17 years, She does have the ability. She spent the last 2 seasons racing in F4 Brazil. She got a pole position in her debut year at the age of just 15. She has the ability. Across the line. That is the 45. No change at the top for Jose Moronito. He remains second place then. And here comes the 23. Can Vitor Batista go even quicker than a 1:42.053? The answer is no. Well, we've got some potential history to be made here. Hang on to your seats, guys. This could be a sizzling Q2. So now we essentially need to figure out what all of this means in the grand scheme of things, because there's a lot to unpick here. And there's a lot of potentials. There's a lot that could actually have a big bearing on this. The drying circuit essentially means that we are almost certainly now facing the prospect that pole position overall is not going to be Pedro Bozell and Enzo Fittipaldi. They get the trophy, of course, for getting the pole position in Carrera Cup, but for the overall race itself, it looks like we could end up with the unbelievable and unfathomable prospect of a challenge team getting on pole position. That is the equivalent of asking Formula 2 drivers to go quicker than the Formula 1 guys, and them actually succeeding to do so. So there is some big upsets coming. Back into the pits goes Pietro Rimbano. Great run from the 27-year-old. But is that just the beginning? When he hands over to the 17-year-old Cecilio De Bello, the youngest driver in the field, are we going to see the mother of all upsets? Into the pits at the end of a victorious session so far comes the 23 of Vitor Batista. So Vitor Batista will hand the car over to Leonardo Herrmann. There is the 45. That's the car that Matias Iorio has got into second position so far. But he's now going to hand over to Jose Moronito. And we know how quickly Cecilio Bello has been going on Thursday and Friday. So this is going to be tight for the top spot in Challenge. This is going to be so close as to who gets pole. There's a 1/10 of a second in it after Q1. Who knows what's going to happen in Q2? As there is the number 23, Vitor Batista, in his coppered overalls from Stock Car Pro. So now they're trying to figure out if there's going to be an upset. Now, the only thing that will happen essentially here now in the break is the teams will change the tyres of the car. That's it. Oh, my word. I am starting to feel the tension of this situation now, because there's a genuine chance here that we're going to get a challenge car on pole position, and not just any challenge car. It could be the one that belongs to the 17-year-old Cecilia Rebello. We know how fast she's been on Thursday and Friday. What if the youngest driver in the entire paddock could get pole position up against the likes of Gabriel Casagrancha, Nelson Piquet Jr., Enzo Fittipaldi, Pedro Bozell? What an opportunity. The fans in the stands enjoying this Porsche festival, essentially, is what this weekend boils down to. The travelling circus that goes to Velocidad, to Interlagos, to Portimao, and to Estoril. An amazing season, full of incredible competitors. For the moment, Vitor Batista has the fastest time of anyone on this drying circuit. But is it good enough for overall pole position? It's up to his teammate, Leonardo Herrmann, to book their place on the front row of the overall grid. prepare for a big upset, because we might well get one here. I love it when motorsport and the elements decide to throw a bit of a curveball into the mix. You never know in this sport, and particularly at the lower domestic levels of motor racing and the lower national levels of motor racing. What I love about championship motorsport at this level is you just don't know going in who's going to get the win, who's going to get the fastest time, what the weather's going to do to shake things up. That's how motorsport is supposed to be. All the cars and drivers are meant to rock up with no idea who's going to get the victory. That is when you know you've got it right. So we've certainly got one final charge battle to come then. Q2 in the sprint challenge. This is going to be very difficult to predict. Which team is going to have the gusto to go for pole position? It could be the 23 crew. Leonardo Herman taking over from Vito Bautista. It could be the 45. Jose Mononito taking back his car from Mattia Cirorio. They are the championship leaders, so on paper they look good. But it could go the way of Pietro Rimbano and the 17-year-old only lady in the field, Cecilia Rebello. It's possible. It's more than just possible. It could even be what actually happens. Out onto the circuit we go then. And it's time to get this pole position won. And it looks like it won't just be the challenge pole. It will be potentially the overall pole as well. Who would have thought it? No pressure, guys, but this could be the ultimate battle for pole position. So the median time to beat is a 1:45.67. That's the time set by Enzo Fittipaldi and Pedro Bozell. There goes the 17-year-old, Cecilia Rebello, the only lady in the field. But she has a chance to grab pole position, not just in challenge, but outright. What a crazy scenario. But exactly what we want when we sign up to motorsport. All the best forms of motor racing have one thing about them above all else, and that is unpredictability. It's what NASCAR gets right. It's what Super GT gets right. It's what most of the GT championships around the world get right. And it's definitely something Porsche Brazil gets right. If you don't know who's going to win when you rock up, then you have no idea what to expect. And that's when motorsport is at its very, very best. I couldn't tell you who's going to be the champion here today. I couldn't tell you who's going to get pole position, because I genuinely don't know. That's what it's supposed to be about, folks. So out onto the circuit. That is Daniel Newman, the man who's recently been crowned as the brand new rookie champion. So Daniel Newman was on Friday confirmed as the rookie challenge champion. Very exciting scenes for him, I'm sure, coming. And he's got plenty of opportunity to continue his amazing rise up the crest of the sport. Here is Jose Mononito, definitely a contender for the pole position. But the drivers who are going to go at it are going to be Luis Souza, Daniel Newman, Rafa Brocchi, Cecilia Rebello, Carlos Ruiz Jr., Jose Morenito, Claudio Reina, Danilo Denari, Leonardo Herman, and Fabio Carboni. Time to find out which driver is going to go top spot. And of course, where that will put them on the overall grid. This is so exciting. Leonardo Herman, a man who really needs to get it right, having made several mistakes on Thursday and Friday. Definitely can't afford to make a mistake now. Pole position overall is now on the line. Never mind in the category. Out of the final turn to get things off to a start. Leonardo Herman still warming up the tyres and brakes. You've got to make sure that when you go for the push lap, that car is going to stop and it's going to bite at every apex you ask it to. These cars are daring little beasts. You've got to be very confident in them when you go through each turn. There is Cecilia Rebello. Took a pole position in F4 Brasil in her maiden season in the category at the tender age of 15. 2 years later, here she is in Porsche Brasil on the recommendation and endorsement of fellow lady Antonella Bassani, who of course won the Sprint Challenge title at the age of 17. Something that is unlikely to happen for Cecilia Rebello, sadly, because of where her standings are in the short race category. But she has been leading races. She has been battling for victories and podiums. And in the endurance category, she's got Pietro Rimbano as a teammate to back her up. Rimbano's put the car a 10th off pole in Q1. In Q2, can she finish the job? Let's find out. Daniel Newman puts the hard work in initially. First lap out of the blocks is a 1:48.6, so still plenty of time to find. But when they come around again to complete this flying lap, there is Leonardo Herman. A chance for overall pole position is in the offing. Only a low 1:47 would be enough to overtake the Carrera Cup cars after their wet session earlier on. Leonardo Herman has just got the parabolica to navigate. Are we going to see a challenge car get a better overall median time than a Carrera Cup car? Surely we are, but it would still be dramatic. They could start ahead of the Carrera Cup cars if they are quicker. Here comes Leonardo Herman. Will it be a faster average? Will he go top spot? Not yet, not yet. Newman's time is a 1:48.63. Oh, keeping us on tenterhooks then. So for the moment, it hasn't happened. But we will wait. We can be patient. Certainly for the moment, Herman's time is not as quick as Cecilia Rebello's. Sousa's gone quicker. Going up to the top spot. There is Jose Morenito trying to get up to speed now. That time is coming. We can sense it. Fabio Carboni goes second quickest. Dirani's gone third. And up to the top spot at the moment, it is the 21 of Daniel Newman, the new rookie champion. But we haven't quite broken the average yet, but we're not far from it. We've still got 8.5 minutes. Jose Morenito knows this car very well indeed. Knows this circuit very well indeed now after his week on Thursday and Friday. As the 98 goes third, that's Cecilia Rebello up to third position then in this session alone. Jose Morenito comes across the line. What can he do as he goes across and gets the lap time in? It's not quicker yet. Fifth position. But we are definitely getting close to these challenge cars on median time, going quicker than their Carrera Cup counterparts. And if that is the case, then we're going to have the most dramatic starting grid we could ever have asked for. Challenge cars ahead of Carrera Cup cars. Cecilia Rebello pounds it through into the hairpin, going quickly. Very good work so far. And the 17-year-old looks really planted. Braking zone, turn in, right-hander. Coax the car in, keep it running nicely. This will do well for Cecilia Rebello. The back of the car looks stable, considering how greasy it is here. She's got good balance and rhythm. And that's what you need on a circuit like this. This is not the time for my timing screen to malfunction, but unfortunately it has. So we'll keep it up to date with the timing screen in front of you on your graphics for now. When my timing screen comes back, I'll tell you where it is on the grand scheme of things. But there's Cecilia de Bello. They've dropped to 5th position for the moment, but can the sport leader move her way further forward? 3rd position for Cecilia de Bello. That's got to have been a quick lap. And crucially, she's quicker than both Leonardo Herman and Jose Morenito. That could be good enough for the overall pole. Dirani going well. Daniel Newman quick as well. There is Daniel Newman in the 21 Caixa car. Looking to try and get similar to what he got earlier on this week. But obviously with Gustavo Bandeira not going as quickly as he would like, he's still got some deficit to make up. And on the median time, it's not quite going to be enough for pole, I don't think. Certainly Newman could set a faster time though than Danilo Dirani. This is so difficult to predict because you've got 2 times across 2 sessions and the median is what counts, not the fastest time of all. So once we get that final piece of the jigsaw puzzle, we will know where everything sets. But it really is down to the wire as Daniel Newman tries to find that faster time. A twitch from the car under braking into turn 1. Out of the final turn, there is Rafa Brocchi. So Rafa Brocchi is trying to get his car to go quicker. He's been sharing that car with Vitor Gens. Over the line goes Rafa Brocchi, not quicker than Claudio Reina, as there is Dirani. There is Carboni, as Dirani's gone quicker than Carboni. And Cecilia de Bello is back down to P6 now. Daniel Newman's now 3rd. Jose Morenito now 4th. 5th is Leonardo Herman, and up to 4th again comes Cecilia de Bello. Well, this is tricky stuff. Hopefully our timing screen is going to update and we're going to know what the fate of the situation is. Now my timing screen's coming back up. Have we got a challenge in overall 1st position? And crucially, if we have, which car is it? Jose Morenito going across the line. Will he go quicker than Cecilia de Bello? 4.5 minutes remaining in the session. No, he does not improve. Daniel Newman, 3rd position, 4.5 on the clock. Still waiting to see what these cars and these drivers can give us. Daniel Newman, 3rd position. Slower than Dirani, slower than Carboni, but for how much longer? The car's definitely got gusto in the hands of Daniel Newman. Across the line, and we're still waiting for a significant average here. But all of the cars in challenge have gone quicker than Carrera Cup on average, as Daniel Newman nearly loses the car completely in a turn 1. And currently pole position is Danilo Dirani with a 1:41.80, and it's only 0.02 of a second quicker than Cecilia de Bello. If Rebello can improve by 0.03 of a second, then the lady in the pack will go pole position. It couldn't be closer if you tried. Here comes Cecilia de Bello. She doesn't need the fastest time in the session. She only needs to improve upon her best by 0.03 of a second to get pole position for the 300 kilometer. Can she do it? 1:42.506 is the time to be. Just waiting for the update. She's done it. 1:42.3. 1:42.3 for Cecilia de Bello. Oh my goodness. The 17-year-old might just have done enough to get pole. 1:42.339. That is undeniably the fastest time of the session so far. Absolutely fantastic. We've still got 2 minutes and 45 to go. But that is good enough for pole for the moment. Cecilia de Bello, the 17-year-old, may just have done the unthinkable. They could get the challenge pole, and by doing so, could go up with the overall pole position. Fabio Carboni fighting back in the chicane. Going up the crest again. They're currently sat in 3rd position. But can Fabio Carboni find that little bit of extra time? He only needs to find 0.2 of a second. As Danilo Durrani comes up with a 1:41.8. That gets them very close to the median pole. It's the fastest time of the session, but it's not going to be good enough. My goodness me, this is tight over the line. And Cecilia Rebello still pushing, still trying to find more. The median time, those are the median times. The 1:42.339 is the median. So Cecilia Rebello still trying to improve upon a 1:42.50. What does she get? 1:42.7. Hasn't improved yet. But all they need to do is keep the cars on the island. We may be about to get the unthinkable. The youngest driver in the field may be about to get overall pole position. Never mind class pole. There is the 22. That is Danilo Durrani. He has the fastest time from the session. But in terms of the median time, it's only good enough a second. So Durrani has to find a way to go an average time of 0.2 of a second quicker. That means he needs to find 0.4. I don't think he's going to do it. He's not. He's going to bail. I think that's it. There is Fabio Carboni, still trying to find an improvement. But as you can see, the tyres are very hot now. And I cannot believe what we're about to say. But it genuinely looks as though Pietro Rimbano and Cecilia Rebello are going to be pole position for the 300 kilometers of Estoril in the Porsche Endurance Series 2025. Fabio Carboni out of the final turn, pushing for the line. What can the 66 do? 1:42.0 to beat for them. Will it be quicker? No, 1:42.3. Here's Cecilia Rebello still trying to find a little bit more just to make it secure. But I don't think she needs to. Time is down to 0. And Cecilia, I think you've done it. I think you've done it, mate. Out of the final couple of corners. And the lady who was pole position in her debut F4 Brazil season 2 years ago is in her first season of Porsche Challenge, comes into the pits, doesn't need to complete the lap because they've done it. Absolutely amazing. Cecilia Rebello and Pietro Rimbano are going to start not just from the challenge pole, but from the overall pole position. Can you believe it? The most incredible result you could ever have asked for. If you'd have put money on Cecilia Rebello and Pietro Rimbano being overall pole position for this race, you could have bought several houses. Absolutely amazing. What a result here at Estoril. The final flying laps come through. No improvement for Daniel Newman. No improvement from Claudio Reina. And no improvement from Leonardo Herrmann. What an absolutely astonishing result. The pole position for the 300 kilometers is going to be a challenge car. And not just any challenge car. It's going to be the 98. It's going to be Pietro Rimbano and the youngest driver in the entire field and the only lady, Cecilia Rebello. Can you believe it? What an amazing result. That is the most unpredictable pole position in Porsche Brazil history. Cecilia, you've done it. Isn't it amazing? You wait years for a fast woman in Porsche Brazil, and now we've got two. Antonella Bassani, Sprint Challenge champion 2023, and now Cecilia Rebello, the most unlikely pole position sitter in Porsche Brazil history. But I tell you what, thoroughly, richly deserved. All the pressure was on her to get that wrong, and she didn't. She drove like a master, and she's only 17 years of age. That is absolutely extraordinary. What a result. And we are going to get the most unlikely of scenarios here. All 10 of the challenge cars will start ahead of their Carrera Cup counterparts. They may not finish ahead of them after 300 kilometers, but right now, who cares? Cecilia de Bello and Pietro Rembano will start the 300 kilometers of Estoril in the Qashqai Grand Prix week from pole position. Absolutely unbelievable. That is the fairy tale of all fairy tales in this paddock. It was one thing when Antonella Bassani won the Sprint Challenge title in 2023, but to get pole position in a challenge car in your maiden season as the youngest driver on the grid, as the lone female on the grid, to get an overall pole position as a challenge driver in the endurance, that's off the scale. The odds of that happening were in the hundreds to one, possibly even the thousands to one. That's what motorsport is good at, though. Sometimes you just dig deep, you go for the result, and you come up with a fairy tale. What an ending to the most unpredictable, most exciting, most phenomenal qualifying session I've ever seen in Porsche Brazil. Bring on the race this afternoon. Well, Kilo Floki is putting out, when was the turn one wipeout? Well, I'm hoping it doesn't come, because with a result like that, we've got an amazing race to come later. We now have to go to the lap charts. It's all provisional, of course, but as it stands at this moment in time, pole position for the 300 kilometers in the Qashqai Grand Prix week of the Porsche Carrera Cup and Sprint Challenge Brazil will go to the 27-year-old Pietro Rembano, the BR Stocklight champion 5 years ago, who raced against Charles Leclerc in the FIA Karting Academy Trophy back in 2011. And alongside him will be Cecilia de Bello, the youngest driver in the field, the only woman in the field in her maiden season in Porsche Brazil. I cannot believe what we have witnessed. It's going to be an amazing battle. Bozel and Fittipaldi are the quickest Carrera Cup guys out there, but Cecilia de Bello and Pietro Rembano have done the unthinkable here at Estoril and bagged pole position outright. This is going to be the most amazing endurance race that Porsche Brazil has seen for many a year. Make sure you tune in for it later on. It's going to be fantastic. From me, Jake Sanson, from my producer, Nicholas Otterloo, thank you so much for watching on Motorsport TV and the Porsche Cup Brazil YouTube channel. We will be back for the race this afternoon. Don't miss it. It's set to be one of the most thrilling endurance races of the year. Bye for now.